Hi guys.
Today, we are going to talk about Ironman Chattanooga, which was a while ago, but still feels very fresh in my mind. Ironman Chattanooga was my 20th Ironman.
Oh wow.
It's crazy to think. My first Ironman was at the age of 24 in 2006. So that makes me 42 years old. And I would say that this was my best Ironman performance to date. So I'm very happy about that.
Congrats.
Well, thank you.
Mhm.
So I thought I would share a little bit behind the scenes and really talk about the mental side of racing, which I think often gets neglected when we spend so much time talking about nutrition and gear and equipment and metrics. So hopefully I'll cover that some of that today in this discussion. All right.
Great. So, why Chattanooga? Why did you wanted to do Chattanooga, and how did you prepare for this race?
Well, Chattanooga is a place that we've been to many times. We have a lot of great memories there. We have brought Campy there several times. We've had great races there. We've also had very difficult races there. I DNF'd or did not start
Missed out.
the Ironman 70.3 World Championship because I fainted on race day morning. So with all the highs, there's also been some lows as well. Um, but we really love that city, and we love how the community really welcomes the event. It's very easy to get around. There's lots of lodging. The course is great. The weather is great. So there's just a lot of um, great things about it. It's 4 hours away from here, so it kind of feels like a hometown race. Um, and as far as my preparation, I didn't do anything specific to focus on this Ironman. For the past 2 years, I've been focused on extreme triathlons, which is an Ironman distance, and I've done three of those: Canada Man, Icon, and Norseman, which was in August. And I think that the preparation for this race was 18 years in the making and just consistency year after year after year. And I race a lot of racing, and that gives me a lot of experience. And I have a lot of endurance that's just built up. I haven't been injured since 2019, and that allows for a lot of consistency and training. So I did do an Ironman distance in August, a month and a half for 6 weeks before this race, but I didn't do anything specific besides riding my tri bike a little bit more often than I usually do.
Good. So, we got to Chattanooga, and you were getting ready for your race, and then what happened 2 days before the race?
Well, besides a hurricane that's about to come through, I got a text from my friend Katie and said, "Marnie, they canceled the swim. What do you think about this?" And I was like, "Are you serious?" Like in 2 days before the race, too. This was the first time in 18 years of racing that I haven't done a swim. My first bike run event, which is kind of crazy. I was sad for a few reasons, or bummed, I guess I should say. I was bummed because I love to swim and I enjoy this swim, this downstream swim. And that's all I know as a triathlete. So that just felt very weird to think about. I'm racing a triathlon without the swim, which is my favorite discipline. I also was concerned in a way because even though I didn't have any goals or expectations for this race, I also didn't want to lose that competitive advantage of having the swim. And that worried me a little bit to think I'm not going to be able to gain that 5 or even 10 minutes out of the water that I usually do, to combine with my bike time to give me some leverage on the run. And that worried me. In a very practical way, I wouldn't say I lack self-confidence, but that's just how I race. I race from the front with the swim and the bike to create as much of a gap as I can, knowing that I'm not the strongest or fastest runner out there. So yeah, that was hard to kind of have all of those thoughts coming all at once. I definitely was not in the camp of yay, no swim. I was boo. And then also as a coach, you worry about other athletes. We have other athletes racing there. So I felt bad for them as well, that they're not going to be able to do the swim. And, that carries over to me as well when they're upset, or, asking questions about that. So yeah, it was a bummer. It was also a bummer to think about, well, why are they doing it 2 days before? Why not, what if things change? But at the same time, I was kind of happy because it gave a full 2 days to just kind of be okay with it and to then be able to think through everything without it being last minute. So it turned out, even though I was disappointed, it still turned out to be a positive in that we had time to mentally prepare for it.
And were there any other stresses that you experienced the days leading to the race that impact you in any way?
Yeah, I would say so. I don't think anybody ever goes into a race without some type of stress in life. It's just very hard to turn life off. We try the best that we can to distance ourselves from work, from personal matters, anything that could keep our mind less focused on the race, because we want to direct our attention to the race. But with the Hurricane Helene coming through Greenville, which was very odd to hear that we would be impacted by the winds of a hurricane close to the mountains, that was concerning. And then also shortly after, we heard we lost power, which we kind of expected, but we didn't expect the type of damage that we had and how long it went on. We actually ended up being without power for 8 days, and we were out without internet for over 3 weeks. So it significantly impacted our area, and we had to deal with that stress being 4 hours away from our home. And we had five cats at home. We had fish at home. So we had a lot of things to think about, and we weren't fully prepared. So thankfully we had good neighbors, but then there's a lot of communication with the neighbors back and forth with me and Corel, and trying to get the generator, trying to get the fish set up. And it was just a lot of things going on. And then on top of that, I still am having a hard time missing Campy. Our senior cat, Madison, wasn't doing so well. So it's just a lot of things that you can't ignore. And that made it hard. But at the same time, sometimes it can be good to have distractions to keep you from focusing or overthinking from the race. I mean, all of these things that I just mentioned are not positive distractions, but at the same time, they are distractions to keep the mind occupied.
Yeah, and as a coaches, we also had the responsibility for our athletes, and we have athletes racing in different fronts. Chattanooga, Augusta got canceled, so we're communicating with our athletes who either went to the Augusta or we're about to leave.
That's
Sunny, come. Good, come here. All right. You will be part of the chat.
And then we had Sunny, who we had just adopted, and we only had him for less than 2 weeks. And so we were trying to figure out his personality, and we wanted him in Chattanooga. And so we were trying to figure out him. So there was a lot of things going on. And then, like you said, dealing with the emotions of our athletes. We had 7 athletes racing Augusta 70.3 that got canceled. We had to tell several of them before they even found out that it was being canceled. So there was a lot of stressors going on. Also, Corel had been having some niggles in his knee, and in any relationship, you feel what your partner feels. So I felt bad for him that he was struggling. So
that's so sweet.
So there was definitely a lot of things going on that was keeping my mind occupied.
Yeah. So it's a lot of things before the race. But you still managed to keep your race preparation and the nutrition fairly simple.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you do that? You always plan ahead, but Why and how does it help with the pre-race
Yeah.
routine?
I have just created a routine that really works for me. It helps take away the guessing. I know exactly what I'm going to eat the day before the race, from before the workout, from after the workout, lunch, dinner, snacks in between. And that helps me in the case that I don't have an appetite. I still know what I need to eat. And then also it just keeps me on a schedule and knowing what I need to check off throughout the day. And I think that routine is very important because it just keeps the mind focused on this is what I need to get done. And then I also give myself time to relax. I enjoy getting to a race a few days prior so that by the time I get to the day before a race, I am bored. I'm building up energy. I'm rested so much that I'm ready to get out there and perform. So I actually enjoy having extra time on that Saturday. So the day before the race, so I can just relax and just kind of watch the clock and make myself get tired and early to bed. So yeah, that's my routine is pretty simple. I do like to ride my bike the day before a race. I know a lot of people don't like to do that just because there's risk for flat tires and debris outside. And I understand that. To me, riding my bike, it brings me happiness. It just puts me in a really good place. But we decided because of all the weather changes and the conditions, it wasn't really hurricane conditions there, but it had been raining, that we would just stay on the trainer. And thankfully, we had the trainer there, which made it super easy for me to ride and get in a good quality session. On Friday, I did more of a workout, whereas Saturday was just priming the system, getting ready to go. I even rode the trainer on race day morning, which we'll get to that. I didn't know that the pool was open on Friday. I would have enjoyed swimming on Friday, but I didn't know it was open, but I was fine with just doing the bike ride. So yeah, nutrition, workouts, it's all the same for every race. I have that dialed in through trial and error, and that brings me a lot of confidence before my races because I know what to expect.
Well, I just want to make a quick comment on the trainer. Obviously, when athletes are flying to races, there's no way they can bring the trainers because they are heavy. But triathletes, every triathlete have a trainer at home, right? You guys ride it all the time. Some of you prefer to stay on the indoor. We have to just keep begging you to go outside and ride outside, and you refuse and you just ride a trainer at home. But then you travel to the race, and despite having the room in the car that you can easily fit the trainer in, you never even consider this option. And for this particular race, it was really useful because the 2 days before the race, the winds were pretty heavy. It was kind of rain on and off, and it was just not really practical and safe to be outside and ride outside. So you could have really good, and you did, a really good pre-race workout on the trainer in the control environment. You didn't make your bike messy, and you didn't risk any flat tires. So it was really good choice and practical. And we looked into weather, the weather forecast, and we simply prevent you being outside. So you just pack the trainer.
Yeah.
And every triathlete has the trainer at home. So why not bring a video?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned your pre-race routine the day or 2 days before. So how was your nutrition and fueling the day before the race? What do you typically do, or what did you do this time? Was there anything different, or was it the same routine?
Same routine. I always have 2 pieces of bread with peanut butter and some kind of topping like honey or syrup. Before I work out, I'll do Never Second. Just usually I have more of that with me for run nutrition, and I'll do that in a bottle for my workout. And then post-workout, I do bagel with peanut butter or butter with eggs, banana, some milk. And then throughout the day, for lunch, I do pasta with marinara sauce and usually a veggie burger if I'm in the mood. For a snack, I do a yogurt and 2 brown sugar Pop-Tarts. And then for dinner, I have Amy's no chicken noodle it's a vegetarian chicken noodle soup, and I add a cup of basmati rice to that. And then throughout the day, I might have some saltine crackers or pretzels. So it's very routine. It's very specific, but it works for me. And I just know that I need to get these things in. And I do it in a way where I'm trying to have my last meal around no later than 6, so I can lay down at 7 and just try to start falling to sleep around 8 o'clock. And race day morning is the same, pretty much the same thing. Before all of my workouts, I either have a half a bagel or a waffle with peanut butter and syrup before all my workouts, doesn't matter what length. And then depending on the duration, I might add more. So I might have a whole bagel or 2 waffles or dress it up a little bit more. So that's what I did on race day morning, a cinnamon raisin bagel with peanut butter and some syrup, banana, and that was my pre-race meal. I also sipped on a sports drink. I sipped on Never Second, and because I did a warm-up in the morning, I had the sports bottle with me for the workout or for the warm-up.
Okay, so you didn't go to a restaurant the night before the race and order a meal?
No. So we did order pizza out 2 nights before the race and invited some friends over, which is just a tradition that we always do with our athletes, having our pre-race pizza meal. I always get the margarita pizza, which is, I prefer that just because it's lighter on the cheese with the buffalo type mozzarella. So it's not heavy in fat, and you get a lot of carbs from the bread, and pizza makes me happy. So I always eat that 2 nights out from the race, but we always order out when we do the pizza. And so we will eat it back in our room so that we don't have to wait for it, and we can just kick our feet up and relax and, enjoy eating it without the busyness of being in a restaurant. And same thing before the race. There's never eating out the day before the race. It's always in our own environment. And even if we're in a hotel room, we keep it super simple. I know for you, we've done rotisserie chicken and microwave rice. So we just keep it super simple.
Mashed potatoes.
Mashed potatoes have worked well for you. Yeah.
So it's a race day. How did you mentally approach this race, which we now know it was just a bike, just a bike and run, and
it was only 138 miles.
Yeah. And what was your routine on the morning? You already mentioned your breakfast, so we can skip that.
Yeah.
And what was what is your mental state, and what was your routine the morning?
Surprisingly, I slept really well. Like surprisingly,
even with the car being towed.
So there was a car being towed right outside our apartment or our Airbnb at 3 in the morning, or sometime 2 to 3 in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And because this was an 8:30 start, I didn't set an alarm until 6 o'clock in the morning. So first of all, that was great. So that actually helped me sleep, knowing that I don't have, I think there's some stress that comes with waking up early. Mm-hmm. Especially for us, having done extreme tries the past 2 years, when you know that there's going to be an alarm at 2 in the morning and you're starting a race at 4 in the morning in the dark, that brings a lot of anxiety. Mm-hmm. And the reason why is, how in the heck am I going to feel when I wake up at 2 in the morning? And so I think that brings a lot of unknowns. Whereas, okay, you know what? Every Saturday morning, I wake up around 5:30 to 6. I eat my pre-race or pre-workout meal, and I do a bike and a run every Saturday. So going into this, I just thought, it's just another weekend. It's just another long brick workout. And I love my brick workouts. I love my long rides. I love running off the bike. So that just helped me have something to look forward to. Instead of being worried or anxious, I was really excited, and that just helped me feel really calm. But there was a car being towed at 3 in the morning, and Sonny was like, "What's going on?" You had to take him outside, right? Because he got up, and we weren't sure of his potty habits yet. And but the
whole building was up because it was like chains and metal rattling and getting the car off. And they really needed to take this car out.
Yeah, and I think under other circumstances, knowing if the race was starting at 7, I would have been waking up probably around 4:30. That would have been very stressful because then it's like, oh my gosh, I only have an hour left before I have to get up. But I was totally fine with it, and it didn't stress me out at all. I was just kind of laughing about it and watching them out there, and then I was able to get back to sleep, and so it didn't affect me at all, which was great. I also knew that the weather was going to be good, which helped, not have something to worry about on race day. And the swim was already canceled, so that was not an unknown anymore. So there wasn't really anything. I think sometimes we stress about things out of our control, and I felt like there wasn't really anything out of my control. It just felt very familiar to me, and that helped me sleep really well. The struggle that I had, which I've had for the past few months, ever since Campy passed away in July, is I have this feeling of, I don't really want to be doing this. I don't want to suffer because I'm already suffering with a broken heart. And so that's been really hard to approach Norseman, Louisville 70.3, Chattanooga, to go into these races and not really fully want to be there, or not have that reason or that why to be there. And so I've really struggled with that despite being able to perform. And so being in that place it's almost makes me a little bit numb. So I guess in a way it's kind of helps because I don't have expectations. I don't have nerves. What's the worst that's going to happen? I'm going to have a bad day, or I know I can get to the finish line and I can take my time getting there. So nothing's going to be worse than losing Campy. So I think all of that has just helped me kind of be like, okay, it's just another race, instead of feeling a lot of pressure. I'm doing something that I love to do, and I'm okay either way. So I think that kind of having that state, but then again, not having the swim, I kept saying, this just doesn't feel like exciting. It just feels like something's missing. Like and it's so weird to say because it's still a big day, but not having the wetsuit, not walking there, not having like the things that we're used to is just kind of like, But then again, I've been doing extreme triathlons for the past 2 years. There's nothing familiar in extreme triathlon. It's an adventure every time. And so we kind of talked about it that, you know what, this is like an extreme triathlon. It's something I've never done before. And I need to approach it that way of, let's see what happens. Let's see how it goes. There's still the bike and the run. It's very familiar, but let's get out there and let's just approach it in a way of, all right, well, this is different. This is new. And let's see what happens.
Yeah. So, yeah, what happened? How was it? How was the time trial start? Did you notice any chatter, like other people, like everybody's there together waiting to start? And also, how did you approach the pacing on the bike? What did you do anything differently, or did you just start like you would do when you get out of the swim? How was it?
Well, first I'll talk about that morning. So we needed to drop off our special needs bags by 7:20, I think it was, either 7:20 or 7:40. I think it was 7:20. So we walked down at 7:00 so I could drop off my bike special needs bags. I went and checked on my bike, make sure the tires were fine, which they were, and set my computer up, checked everything. And so we were out by 7:20. We kind of did a little jog on the way there, jog on the way back. We were staying a half a mile away. So it was just enough time to kind of get things warmed up. And we were back in the room by 7:45. The age groupers were starting at 8:40. So I had about an hour before the start. So I chose to warm up on the trainer, and I just did about a 10-minute warm up.
So, wait a second. So your bike is in transition. You warming up on the trainer?
Yes.
Did you bring two bikes?
No, I had your bike.
My bike.
Yeah. So Corral came up with the idea, and I kind of thought about it, but I was like, I don't know if this would work. But Corral came up with the idea. I said, hey, let's just drop the seat. You can get on my gravel bike that I have on the trainer, you had your gravel bike, right?
Yeah.
On the trainer, and you can just spin your legs. So I just spin my legs for 10 minutes just to get warmed
and it was
up.
all about just moving blood and,
Yeah.
and spinning the legs.
I just
and,
got
and
warmed up.
warming up in your core. So it didn't matter what the fit of the bike
Yeah.
is. You just drop the seat down. So it's good for you.
You adjusted
and,
it once after I got on just to make sure. So yeah, and I had an extra pair of shoes, so I didn't have to worry about using my race shoes on that. So yeah, it was great. So I warmed up for 10 minutes, and then around 8:20 we walked down there.
Did you like it to warm up on the trainer before?
I did like warming up on the trainer. Usually we do a little jog warm up before the race, but I really liked just getting the heart rate up, just getting the blood flowing without having to run the whole time. So I did do some jogging, and that helped. It was very humid out, so that kind of helped, that it got me in a good place of like, okay, it's not going to be a cold day. And then we just walked down there. I put my shoes on, put my helmet on. I gave you my running shoes, and then I just walked to my bike, picked up my bike, stood in line, and they were going to do it in numerical order from bib numbers, but it was more of like ranges, like 100 to 200, 200 to 300. So I was in, I can't remember my number, maybe 200 something. So I was towards the front. So yeah, we just stood in line, and then it was like a row of 3 or 4, and then every other person went, or 2 people at a time went. So 2 people here, 2 people here. And then it was just like the swim start. Beep.
So since you are a triathlete, I assume that your shoes were already mounted to the bike and you did a flying mount, right?
No. And I never do a flying mount anyways, but yeah, you just have nice thing. And this was kind of also another downside to it is I really enjoy the transition areas because I try to make them as quick as possible. And I'm very proud of myself for how fast I can do things like putting on my compression socks, putting on my shoes, my helmet, doing everything that I need. And that's a big part of racing too, that if you can be 2 or 3 minutes faster than somebody else, you get out on the bike faster, you get in a different group. So that was also a downside that, oh man, I'm not going to have the transitions, but it was nice to have everything on. And I think that was also another anticlimactic feeling of we don't get that rush of having to change and do everything in the transition area. But yeah, I got on the bike and
socks, no socks.
I wore my compression socks. In full distance Ironmans, I choose to wear full distance or full compression socks. And in 70.3s, I'll either wear calf sleeves if it's wetsuit legal, so I just put on socks after the swim, or if it's not wetsuit legal, I'll just put on full socks. Now,
how did you make any friends?
Yes, I talked to a few people, but I was kind of actually in my own state. I think I wasn't really talking to a lot of people. Were talking in a very cheerful, positive, which I enjoyed feeling that energy. Nobody was complaining. So that was great. The pros had already been off. So it was the age groupers, and yeah, it was all positive. I just was kind of like in my own place of, all right, I just want to get this started. I just want to be on my bike. Now, as far as pacing goes, this is interesting. And we haven't really talked about this. I haven't told you this, but so before the race, in my head, going into it, I was like, okay, well, I did tell you I don't want to run another 4-hour marathon because I feel like I've been running between 350 and 4 hours for so many years. And I've just been stuck in that range. And I know I'm capable of something more. And I was just like, if I run another 4-hour marathon, I don't think I should be doing Ironman anymore. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I'm just tired of running for 4 hours, and it's not fun for me to be running for that long. I want to be running faster. So in my head, I was just like, okay, maybe I should ease up on the bike. Maybe that's what I need to do. It's not my approach. It's not how I race, but maybe for this race, I'll try something different and I'll just ease up a little bit on the bike. And
that makes sense that you did 24 miles per hour.
Well, but wait a minute. Then before the race, you said, I don't know if I asked you about pacing or anything, but you just came out and you said, Marnie, because there's not a swim, you should go a little bit harder than you normally do.
Well, I said it because, I explained it why. Yeah. It's not that you all of a sudden are stronger, but you didn't use the energy in the swim, so you have that extra energy, because we all know no matter how good swimmer you are, the swim always has an impact on your ability to bike. So when athletes typically complain, like, I don't know what happened, I typically do this power, this type of speed when I ride my intervals in my training, and then in the race I was not able to do that. Well, the swim happened. But here we knew that the swim will not be there, so you would not need to use that energy for the swim. You can use it for the bike.
Yeah. So as soon as Corral said that to me, I was like, okay, I'm just going to do what I know what to do. And I like to bike hard, and hard is relative. And as far as like pacing, I don't have specific numbers. I know what I can do just based on training sessions. And I do a lot of group rides and mountain biking, and all of that is very punchy. So I know that I can do higher watts and still recover from them. And then also I have raced, I raced a super sprint, a double triathlon earlier this year as sprint distance. So I had to go very, very hard. And I've raced 2 half distance Ironmans. And I remember specifically at Louisville 70.3, I biked very hard at that. And then I ran. And after that race, I told myself, gosh, I feel like I could have ran a full marathon at that pace. It didn't. So that was a reminder to me that, you know what? I can hold this and still run well off the bike. So I knew the watts that I was capable of doing, but I also wanted to ride fast. So on my computer, I have a lap screen that shows me the lap time. I look at the lap normalized power. I look at 10-second power. I look at current cadence. I don't wear a heart rate monitor, so I remove that for setting on there for the races. And then I have, I'm not sure if I have something else on there. That might be it. So that's my,
like, were you aware of your average speed, like lap speed?
And then I have the lap speed on there. So I have an idea of that. And so this course was, you go out, kind of pilot road for 5 miles, and then it's out and back 3 times, and then coming back. So I was able to just hit that lap button. This was a new course. I've never done it before. It was on a highway. I studied the course online. I didn't drive it, but really I wanted to use the first loop to kind of understand not just the course, but understand the weather, understand how my body was doing, understand where the hard sections were, where the easy sections were, and then take it from there. So I didn't have a specific strategy. I never do when I race. I just know what I want to feel, and I pay attention to the dynamics of the race, to whoever's around me. And when I started the bike, I was towards the front, but I found myself within 5 miles with only a few guys ahead of me. One of our athletes, Scott, was at the front of the race.
I think he was like the first guy on the bike. I remember, like, as I'm walking back towards our place, and I see, oh, the age group already started. And I see the first guy I see, it's Scott.
Yeah. And then eventually by the turnaround there, it was just me and him at the front, besides the professionals, men and women. So that's how I approached it. On the way out, it felt a lot faster than on the way back. The way back had a little bit more headwind. It also had more net uphills that made it more challenging. So once I did the out and the back, kind of looked at my speeds, looked at the watts, I rode that all pretty much by myself. I got passed by a few guys, but by the second loop, it was, again, very solo effort. I had an idea, and that mentally helped me pace myself. Of course, the second loop is going to always be hard just because it's in the middle. You're a little bit more tired. But I had an idea, and I knew what to expect throughout it. The third loop was definitely the easiest mentally and physically, just because there was more people on the course. I never looked at my distance, so I didn't know how far I was besides the mile markers. So I didn't know that the course was a few miles short at 107 miles instead of 112, 108. I didn't know my overall time until the end. I never like to look at it. So I was just laser focused on being in the moment, focusing on my nutrition, paying attention to the guys around me, and then just
And we discussed before the race, I said, be extra careful when you ride, give yourself more space, because you as a, shorter, smaller female, you will be always watched as, oh, is she drafting with the guys? You may be actually going faster than the guys and passing them, but the referee, may see it as, oh, there's a girl riding with these big guys, she must be drafting, right? So we discussed this before. Unfortunately for you, you always have this kind of disadvantage, how your riding is viewed, and I wish that the referees can just go for a ride with you so they can experience it. But we always wanted to play extra safe, so you were giving yourself extra space, that cost more energy, essentially. So you already mentioned that you focus on your nutrition. So what was your nutrition on the bike? How did you fuel? And do you have any like ways how you follow your fueling? Do you have alarms set on your Garmin, or you work the spreadsheet and you know exactly that you need to take this bite of that and this pill and this powder and this who knows what and gel and everything else, and you just carry a big backpack, or how do you do that?
It's pretty simple. I do a bottle per hour, and I have 80 grams of high fructose from Infinite Nutrition in each bottle. I start out with the fruit punch flavor for the first 3 bottles, and
It's
then
fructose sucrose mix, right?
it's a high fructose. Or sorry, did I say high fructose?
Yes.
Infinite fructose. Thank you.
Yes.
Infinite fructose mixture, and 80 grams of carbs and 26 ounces of fluid. And I do a bottle per hour. I started off with 3 bottles on my bike and of the fruit punch flavor, and then I stopped at special needs. That took me about less than 30 seconds to stop, put 3 more bottles on, discarded my other bottles. And that was the grape flavor, which is my favorite, and ended up finishing almost a little more than 5 bottles for the 4 hours and 40 some minutes that I was riding.
So how many bars did you eat?
None.
No. And gels?
None.
Do you have any gels, any bars?
No gels,
Right.
no bars, no salt pills.
Now the real question. How many salt pills did
None.
you take?
None.
You didn't take any salt pills?
No. And this is the same thing that I do in all my long training sessions. It works for me. Now in the extreme tries, I have different approaches just because it's a different intensity. But this works very well for me, and I do it in all my sessions, so I know what to expect. I take 3, 4, 5 chugs every 10 to 15 minutes. It was a little bit more challenging in this race because it was raining for most of the race, and then also the intensity that I was racing, you just and the course, because it was just so straight, except for the turnarounds, it's like you just want to ride, but I had to kind of make myself drink, rotate the bottles, grab it from the back, put it between my aero bars so I can have it there. And but I would make sure that I was drinking. I would try to figure out the best times to be drinking. But yeah, that was my strategy, and super simple.
Good. So did you do anything during when you were passing the aid station? Did you utilize the aid station at all?
No, I didn't grab any bottles just because it was cooler day, and I had 6 hours worth of nutrition because I wasn't sure what if I was doing the old course, which was 116 miles, I was anticipating about 5:15. I mean, I would have been happy with 5 hours. That would have been a stretch goal. So I was kind of thinking around 5 hours, but I always want extra nutrition just in case I lose a bottle or anything happens. So I had 6 hours worth of nutrition. So I didn't finish all those bottles, but I had it all with me, but I didn't need anything extra at the aid stations.
At the special needs to
get 3 more bottles. Yeah. But I didn't need any more fluids just because even though it was a little bit humid, I wasn't sweating excessively. So I didn't need that extra fluid or anything to cool myself because I was already wet from the rain.
Did anything surprise you on the bike?
Well, I saw you out there, so you surprised me. I was like,
welcome.
I was like, oh, you're out there, and Jamie was out there as well. And I was actually quite surprised to see so many spectators out there. It was really nice to see a lot of people cheering. They had the road blocked off so that there was cones with us in the inside lane closest to the grass median. so outbound and inbound. And then the cars would exit on the ramps, and that's where our aid stations were. So the aid stations, actually, you had all the lanes without any cars. So that was kind of nice. So you didn't have to be on one lane with people grabbing bottles. You're not grabbing anything. So we could just scoot all the way over. So it was nice to see you. You gave me an update that I was leading the overall amateur race, but there was a girl that was biking faster than me. Or no, I was leading my age group, but I was second because there was a girl biking faster than me. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. That's nice to have kind of that pressure. So that was kind of nice. Of course, my mind wandered a few times throughout the bike, but definitely hearing that helped me kind of stay a little bit more focused.
Yeah. So with this time trial start, it was a little bit more tricky to track athletes and give them the right update, because somebody could start an hour and a half behind you, and on the tracker in the last 2-3 checkpoints, you can be leading, right? But then when that person get to that first place or to the same place, then the person is going faster, so everything updates, but it's really delayed. So you really don't know unless you are really going back deep, and I was doing that, so I was aware. But so like this one girl, she was riding faster in the first time check, but then she started fading again. So you actually regained that overall lead on the bike. And but that was kind of like that. That's always the tricky part whenever you have a time trial start, because and that same applies to rolling start. Although like those athletes that typically are competitive, they try to start a race somewhere from the front. But there are also some athletes that their strategy is to start in the middle, so they have more people to pass on the bike, which that helps. So it creates the wall. You sort of drafting without intentionally drafting. So it just takes a lot of ways to go about it, and makes the tracking sometimes a little bit more difficult. But it's not the first time that we've done the race, and I know how to work these things. So I was always try to give you some updates that are accurate and that are actually useful to you.
Yeah. And I wanted to make sure that my last loop was my best loop, in terms of I wanted to save a little something for that last loop, just knowing that that's where other people can fade. The way back was very challenging. The hills were very long on the way back. I was like, did we go on these on the way out? I don't remember this at all. Like, you're just staring at this wall of a hill. But I love the course. I really enjoyed the course. It was fast. It had over 5,000 feet of climbing, so it was hilly.
It was simple, and it was actually
it was simple. Good. It was safe. I really enjoyed it. So when I was getting back into town, I kind of had my normal thoughts of, what type of runner am I going to be off the bike, which I think is very normal, especially someone like myself who isn't a strong runner. I'm more of a strong cyclist and swimmer. I always have some self-doubts about the run, and I question, how am I going to feel? What is it going to be like? I don't have that Chelsea Sodaro mentality or Patrick Longuet of get me off the bike. I can't wait to run. And I always tell myself that on the bike. And I try to convince, I'm like, you're a runner. You're going to run great today. And I try to tell myself that. But then there's this voice in the back of my head says, well, we don't know which one is going to come out today. Who's it going to be? But, I guess there's nothing you can do about it. And I've done so many Ironmans, and I've hurt at the beginning of a race and have to struggle through 26 miles. And I felt great up until 18. And then you just kind of are fighting to the finish. So that's just part of it. And I remember a recent podcast with Jackie Herring, and she talked about that, one of her favorite things is just struggling in an Ironman and having to work through those obstacles. And so I just kind of I didn't really overthink it too much. I was just like, I looked at my computer, I switched the screen. I was like, holy cow, I biked fast. And I saw you there, and Sunny was sitting there. He was so cute sitting there. I was like, Sunny. And that made me really happy. But I was just really happy with the bike. So if anything, I had done something I had never done before, with the speed that I had ridden for 108 miles, so 23 miles per hour. So I was just like, all right, this is already a win. This is great. Now I just get to run a marathon.
So let's go to the run. How did you execute the run, and how did you deal with the fact that they actually changed the run course without saying anything, and you found out as you were running?
Yeah, I was not happy about that. So as far as the run goes, just like the bike, I break it down into sections. And this really helps a lot on loop courses, but especially on a course like Chattanooga that kind of has two distinctive sections where you kind of have what I would say is an easier section and a harder section. And I look
one side of the river and the other side.
Yeah, and I look forward to the harder section because there's more hills. And I want to make sure that people understand when I look forward to hills, it's not that it's easy. It's very hard to run, and of course we get tired, but I see it as a strength of mine. So I see it as my superpower. So when I think of hills, I think, well, other people are going to struggle, but that's where I can excel. It doesn't make it any easier physically, but mentally it's a place that I look forward to. So when I got off the bike and started, the volunteers took my bike, and my legs actually felt pretty good, and my mom was there and she was cheering for me and giving me updates, and it just made me very happy. So I was just really happy that I was leading the amateur race, and I had a feeling that, okay, I'm going to get caught on the run like I always do. So I'm just going to enjoy this and just kind of focus on myself and my day and putting together a race that I can be proud of, and trying to work through everything that the Ironman gives me on the day. So I felt pretty good throughout the race. And actually for the first few miles, I would check in with my body, I would check in with my watch and just kind of see how things were matching up. And I'd look at my pace and go, I'm holding a pretty good pace. It was a little under 8-minute miles. And my goal was under 4 hours. So anything under 9-minute miles was great, but I kind of was like, okay, if I can just hold between 8 and 8:30, I think this is going to be a great day. I was under 8 minutes, and I was like, you know what? I did that for Louisville 70.3. I felt good. You know what? I'm going to keep this going for as long as I can. And my goal was to do the half marathon and try to keep that same effort, which meant just working a little bit harder than what was truly comfortable. So just keeping that gas on a little bit more. And I wasn't worried because I knew that I have the ability to still run even when I'm tired. It might be slower. But it was a risk that I was willing to take. And throughout the run, I kept telling myself, if you want something you've never had, you have to do something you've never done before. And so I kept telling myself, I have to do this and see what happens. And I'm not going to have this opportunity ever again. I always tell myself that in races, you're here now, so don't give up. So I just used a lot of those mantras, focused on my nutrition, really making sure that I was drinking my Never Second. I had a scoop in each of my 10 ounces flasks. I carried some ketones in a little bottle. I like to hold things when I run, so I had that. I didn't start sipping that until about 8 miles. You can read my race report to read more about my nutrition, but I had little baggies, so I would stop and refill those baggies along the way. And I just really wanted to do everything right for this marathon. Now, everything was going well, and then I see some professional women coming back on the same stretch of road, on this highway road. And I was like, no, you've got to be kidding me. I did not mentally prepare myself. I mentally prepared myself for those stupid 4 miles going out, because it's hard. If anyone's ever done Chattanooga, it's like going out, it's just kind of like, but then you turn and you're by the river, you're on the path. There's like some wooden bridges. It's shaded. It's pretty. I was so looking forward. So I mentally prepared myself just for this out section. I was like, I did not mentally prepare myself to run back on the same stretch of road. But thankfully, it was only about a little more than a mile where they put us back on the road and then put us back.
Like it was flooding on the path.
So thankfully it was fine, but it was just kind of one of those things. And I was actually running with a few other guys. And so it kind of helped to just kind of keep that pace for a little bit. But then it was just kind of like, okay, now I know it's going to be fine. But yeah, I broke the course down into like, you're running out, you're running back, then you're running across the bridge, and then you get to the hillier section. And I just really looked forward to that, just to be able to change up my rhythm, change up the style of running every time I finished a flask. So I had 2 flasks already filled, and then I expected to fuel for 3 hours worth of nutrition. So um, I had 4 more packets of nutrition with me, and I had planned only 3 hours because I figured once I got through all those, I would just use Coke to get me through the finish. So I ended up stopping 3 times to fill up the flasks with the powder from the little baggie. It's a little jewelry bag. Stopped. It took about 30 seconds. So in all, it was less than 2 minutes worth of stops. And I was efficient. I was quick. I did what I needed to do. And then I went on to running. And that was part of my plan. I could stick with my nutrition, no issues. But yeah, so I saw you several times out on the course and you were just giving me fantastic updates. But I really, for this run, it just flowed for me. I just felt good. My energy level was very good. My mind was in a good place. And I enjoyed the experience of doing something that I had never done before. And by that time, it's the not swimming didn't even cross my mind. Once I got on the bike, it was like, okay, we're racing. But I really enjoyed it. I never let myself think about worrying about competition until I got to the bridge on the second loop. So about mile 20, I allowed myself to say, okay, now you can really try to win this, which Corral told me I was leading and Elise was getting close to me. She's a fantastic runner. But he had told me on the backside on the hills that she was a little bit slower than me on that section. So whereas usually it's like, oh my gosh, 6 more miles. I was like, yes, 6 more miles. I can't wait to do these 6 miles because I can try to get more of a lead or extend my lead. So yeah, I really stayed committed.
And so speaking of the hills, how did you feel about those hills that people are so afraid of in Chattanooga course after experience? So here you climb those hills for a few minutes, and a Norseman, you climb the hill for several hours, right?
Yeah.
It was like 3 hours or so since the last part it was uphill.
Yeah.
So did it help you or was it still hard? How was it?
Of course, it's hard. Of course, the legs are a little bit tender when you're running a marathon off the bike. But when I had climbed for 6 miles up Zombie Hill in Norseman,
and then you continue climbing.
And then you continue climbing. So I'm doing in these extreme tries where I'm going over 4,000 feet of elevation. These hills, these tiny little hills that last a minute or two or 30 seconds were nothing to me. And I was like, piece of cake. And I think it's important to have that reference or have that in mind. And with more experience, you're able to keep everything relative, right? So like for us where we live, we have so many hills where we live. We have so much climbing and elevation. So when we get to a flat race that just has a little bit of an incline, we're like, that's no big deal. I mean, we got a hill leaving our neighborhood that we have to do every time we start a bike or start a run. So things are just very relative. So when I see these hills, I was just like, this is nothing. I can shuffle. I mean, we shuffled up Zombie Hill for an hour. I was like, I can shuffle up this hill for 2 minutes. That's no big deal. So it physically and mentally, it just didn't faze me. And I look forward to it.
Yeah. So you finished the race. You went through the finish line. You heard that you are an Ironman. And then what? Then did you know immediately that you won? Or how was it, the moments after you crossed the finish line? Were you nervous? Or, we already said that with the time trial start, we have to wait a little bit to see where everybody else finished. So how was it? How did it feel?
Well, I have to admit that before the race, I was actually nervous or worried that I wouldn't even get on the podium or be top 3 in my age group without a swim. I really thought that without a swim, I can't do this. I can't be competitive. I need the swim. And this race taught me that I don't need the swim. And I just put together my best marathon pace that I've ever done. I ran 3:33, which I've never done before. And I just thought, wow, this is incredible. And I would have been happy no matter what happened, just because I put together a race that I was proud of. And that's what the Ironman is all about, you versus you. And at least that's how it is in the extreme tries, is you versus you. And I just had that same mentality here. But you had told me that Elise was getting close, so I had to kind of sprint the last half mile. But I really tried to enjoy the finish line, as we always should do, just because you should never take that for granted. So I was thrilled when I crossed the finish line. And when you told me that I really was the overall female amateur, when it was kind of finalized, it took about 10 minutes or 15 minutes or so of waiting till the tracker kind of officially uploaded. But I was like, wow, did I really just do that? I just couldn't believe
It
that.
was actually longer than that. Your perception of time when you finish the Ironman is different, but it was like half an hour.
Yeah.
She started about it.
And there's no awards, there's no celebration for the overall female amateur, especially when there's professionals at this race. It was a little bit more exciting at Louisville when I was the overall female amateur, because I got to hold up the tape. But there's nothing, no one would have known otherwise. But for me, I was very proud of myself, because not just what I did physically, but just what I was able to overcome mentally. Because there was a lot of things going into this that I could have easily and accepted that this isn't going to be a great race and I don't need to be racing. But I wanted something that I looked forward to finish the year, something that made me happy, and Chattanooga makes me happy. And so I really wanted to race with people and be in that community of people that, that I really enjoy our triathlon community and being with our athletes. So yeah, I was really happy, and I was very sore and walking around hobbling, but overall I felt really good.
Good. So to close it up, I think it's safe to say that this was your best Ironman performance, despite the swim being canceled. But you bike the fastest average speed for the distance, and you also ran the fastest marathon on a hilly course, and you did it at the age of 42. How? What? How did it happen? What helped you achieve this at kind of like the later age, versus we know that the sport is getting faster. There's a lot of fast young athletes coming into the sport and always raising the bar. So how were you able to put together this race at your age and have the best performance?
Well, I'd love to hear your thoughts. We haven't talked about this, but I'd love to hear your point of view. But for me, just a decade plus of experience of knowing how to race, being in race environments, lots of different race environments, from mountain biking to stage racing to Xterra racing to gravel racing to short distance to long distance, done it all. Extreme triathlons have really challenged me in ways that I've never been challenged before. So when I get to an Ironman, it feels relatively easy because it's so familiar to me, and it's so different to the unknown and the cold water and the dark and the elevation of these extreme tries. And so all of that just has helped me. But I really have to say that over the past few years, I've dabbled into so many different events that it's just renewed my joy and happiness for the Ironman distance, the Ironman brand. So I'm not burnt out. I'm enjoying training. I'm able to keep myself healthy due to variety, but also knowing what works for my body. And being able to change things up in a way that keeps it fresh so that my body doesn't get stale doing the same thing over and over again. So I think it's the combination of doing this for so long, but also changing it up so that it still feels fresh and exciting. And I'm motivated to still challenge myself in different ways.
Yeah, so this is basically exactly what I would, what I had in mind, seriously, because all the variety of the events that you experience, and through those events, you became a better athlete. You became way better cyclist than you've ever been. And that's so important. A lot of athletes they do the same thing over and over. They ride trainers most of the time, and they expect to see a better results. It's not really going to work that way. You can be pushing the power on the trainer and hope that it will somehow transfer to the race. And it's kind of like, you heard it from me many times. Like, I can kind of fake it on the bike because I know how to ride a bike, and I know how to adapt to a course, to the conditions. So I can have a lot less power in my disposal than some of my competition, and I can still finish with a better bike time, just because I know where to use those watts, and where to ease up and how to manage the course. And you learn that through the mountain bike and gravel riding, these big bike events, and of course these triathlons and the extreme triathlons. So you know what it feels like to suffer. You know what you need to recover from each push. You are not afraid to push, and you know how to handle your bike, and you do it pretty well. I remember when we moved to Greenville, which we have really difficult terrain around here, you were not really able to ride your bike here, right? And now you are a completely different person. You enjoy it. You go off road. You are sending it on the mountain bike. You're doing these, gnarly races, and you even travel across the world to do a mountain bike stage race in Africa. So yes, you gain a lot more experience that help you execute a simple road triathlon course much better than some other competitors.
Yeah. And the last thing I would, just as to help other people as well, is that although I do enjoy long workouts and the being out there for several hours, but my training is not extreme in a way that I'm training hard and hurting myself all the time. I do a lot of easy sessions, biking and running, joyful sessions, and then I have some very specific workouts as well. All of my swim workouts have structure and intensity in them, and that's needed for me. But the bike and the run is definitely a mixture of just enjoying the sport for what it is, riding my bike outside, running outside. But then there's intervals. There's specific work that I do as well. And it's just constant layering and building and developing. So there really isn't big jumps. It's just happened year after year after year after year of just gradually building and just kind of tweaking it just a little bit for just that new little refreshing stimulus.
I think it's a good way to end the chat. Is there anything else you want to add to it? Any post-race feelings? How do you feel?
I was pretty,
a few weeks after, and anything like that.
Yeah. The last thing I just want to mention is I was very empty after this race, and that's really why I wanted to do this chat and why it also took me so long to do this chat is it just took me these races, and with Campy passing away and Norseman being so anxiety provoking with the cold water and the magnitude of that race and traveling to a new country. And then also your races, your extreme tries, that has me nervous because that's a big responsibility for me as well. And then also joining you at the end of those races. It's just been mentally exhausting this year. And by the time I finished that race, I felt like my cup was completely empty. I used everything I had mentally to give to the sport of triathlon, and I had nothing more. If somebody said, I'll give you $1 million to race again next weekend, I just don't think I would have been able to do it, just because I just had nothing left to give to the sport. And so did I stop triathlon? No. But I definitely stopped doing things in a way that it was structured and specific, and I just did what felt right for 3 weeks. If you look at my Strava, you'll see that I was still riding my bike. I was still swimming. I was still running, but it was definitely in a way that it was joyful. Mm-hmm. It was stress relieving. The weather was great. And so it was doing it in a way that it was for me, not for the sport of triathlon. So that's just what I want to end with. And now I feel much better. I don't know what I want to do next year for races. I declined my Kona slot. Again, for the third or fourth time. Maybe I'll get back there one of these days. But yeah, I don't know what I want to do next year, but I'm definitely in a much better place. My cup is filling back up again, and I'm back into a little bit more structured training. So thank you for the interview. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it.